Hello, I'm Penny Thornton and welcome to my astrology channel. On this video, I'm going to be looking at January, the month ahead, for Taurus. Now, of course, the minute we've crossed into a new year, first month of a new year, 2021, things don't automatically change. We don't suddenly get a whole new vibe. That comes in gradually. But certainly when we got to the end of December and the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, Jupiter and Saturn now in Aquarius, that new vibe is beginning. But I have to say, as a general rule of thumb, January is a little tough for us all, whatever our zodiac sign. And by the time we get to the end of the month and we cross the boundary into February, it is all going to start to get much better. And I think the promise of this year will start to really materialize. So let me take you to my little map, my little horoscope, so that we can actually see what's going on. I'm going to make this a little bigger. And let me see here. It takes a little moment just to do this. Oh, you can see it now. All right, so I want to start at the beginning and just let's look at this pattern here. We can look and see that is something interesting. And of course, the first thing I want to say is that all the planets kind of grouped up at that top portion of your horoscope is in itself a statement. This has to do, A, with things continuing to be a little intense until we start to see the Sun and Mercury and all these other planets start to move around the zodiac a bit. We are stuck with this little commune here. And it makes life intense in the sense that there's a lot going on. So there's a lot going on in the world, and there's a lot going on in your world too. And you can probably see here two planets out on their own, and this is a sign of Taurus. Mars and Uranus here, and that's a very special reason that January is going to be quite an unusual month for you, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I want to start off with the main event, the main story. The Sun, eventually Venus, Mercury, all moving through the ninth house of far horizons. Now, this house has a lot to do with people and places at a distance from you, but it also has to do with far horizons in terms of ambitions and hopes and what's going to happen in the months and years ahead. It's an area of the chart where a lot goes on in terms of long distance. I always say it's a house where we make journeys, and we can make journeys in miles, and we can make journeys in experience and knowledge. And I certainly think January is a month for journeys in knowledge and experience. Now, right from the start of the month, we have this planet here, Pluto, involved. And the reason that it's involved is that Mercury and Pluto are in conjunction here. And that means in the first week of January, there are really hot potato issues to deal with. These might be to do with plans and projects for the year ahead. So you've got to talk to people and draw some plans out and see how everybody sits together. But it's also quite a confrontational aspect. And the reason I'm going to spend some time talking about it is that the Sun will also come over Pluto. It's going to do that around about the 14th of the month. And these two movements involving Pluto mean that something that's perhaps hidden or not discussed needs to be brought out into the discussion room. It's like the elephant in the living room needs to be confronted. The thing is that this happens so early in the year that you get the Sun and Pluto and Mercury and Pluto and eventually Venus and Pluto going over this particular point in your horoscope means it's an ideal time to get rid of stuff you absolutely do not need in order to create space in which to put things that you do need. Now, of course, we can mean that quite literally in that you get rid of clutter. Certainly on the 5th of January, it's highly appropriate to get rid of the debris of Christmas past. So you do something very physically, get rid of the decorations. But it's more than that, really. It's also sizing up, very particularly what activities, what patterns, what people even are proving time consuming and getting in the way of what you really need to do and what you really want to do. So on those dates that I've just mentioned, when Pluto is particularly strong, ideally you want to think of getting rid of clutter. if by any chance what happens around those dates, and we're looking at the 5th and the 14th, something happens that really changes your landscape in some way, see it in that light. See it as getting rid of things that aren't needed for the rest of your journey, and that you're going to be clean and clear after this to move on. Now, you can also see these planets here. This is Jupiter, that's Saturn, and they're in the very early part of Aquarius. They just moved in December. So what's going to happen during this month is that the Sun is going to pass over them, and Mars down here is going to angle them 90 degrees, a square. So it's bringing out the potential of this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction for you. Now, I've written extensively about this in your year ahead, which you can get online, and gone into that really, really fully. But just briefly to say to you that Jupiter, Saturn here in the 10th house of life direction, it's where your ambitions, personal ambitions are. It's also things to do with your career. Then Jupiter and Saturn, especially at this period of time and up until March, will really help you place some solid foundation stones on the things that you want to have happen in 2021. Jupiter's very fortunate. This will provide opportunities. It will give you some joy. And Saturn is always paying for the joy. It's a little bit like the hard work you have to get in to pay for that. Again, that's something I've expanded on in your year ahead. But certainly when you get the Sun involved with these two, and we're looking here particularly as we get to the middle of the month, but also when we get to the end of the month as well, when the Sun contacts Jupiter, these are really high points. I want to also talk about Mars. Mars enters Taurus, your sign, on the 6th of January, and it's going to remain in Taurus for 6 weeks. But the most important thing that we're going to look at is this Mars-Uranus conjunction, when Mars hooks up to Uranus on the 20th of the month. Now, of course, that's a special day in the United States. It's the day of the inauguration. The Sun will just have gone into Aquarius, so it's just beginning its passage through your 10th house of career and life direction. And what Mars and Uranus do together is shake things up a bit. Now, that gives you, because Mars is in your sign, the option to do that yourself. This is your opportunity to say, you know what? I know we've done it this way for years, but now we're going to do it this other way. And, I want to state, this is me, Taurus, speaking, I want now to implement some new things in my life. And if those affect other people or, however, be that as it may, because with Uranus in your sign, and let's look at Uranus as the higher octave of the self, this has a lot to do with bringing out aspects of your true self. And that's fundamentally what Mars and Uranus are doing here, is allowing your true self to emerge. And that may come as a surprise to even you, but it is about change. And while I always like to think that my heads up on the month ahead gives you an opportunity to get into the driver's seat of your life, we can't always stop those things that happen out of the blue that change things for us. And that certainly is very possible as we look at that middle part of the month. I would say in many ways there is a sharp difference between the first half of the month, right through until about the 13th, 14th, and what happens thereafter. There's a different kind of tone to it. The first half is all about getting rid of clutter, creating a space in which you can live and grow and move, which is all very positive, but it still has an element of upheaval about it. By the time we get to the 14th of the month, a new moon will have happened the day before, on the 13th. Then Mars and Uranus are set to meet on the 20th. We're going to see a lot of sudden change coming about and things happening quite unexpectedly. This doesn't mean they're good. It doesn't mean they're bad. But often when things happen and we don't expect them, we do have a resistance to them. That's just simply human nature. We figure that that's not something we wanted. We didn't design that, so we're not going to like it. But I think give it time. Taurus. And this is one of the things that's such a feature of January, is with things coming at you left, right, and center, whether they're things to do with the family, things to do with your job, things to do with you yourself, your relationships. They come out of left field, but if you give them time to sink in, you'll see that there are real benefits. And the real benefit of all of this is you and your liberty, whether that means a burden is lifted off your shoulders or you are a lot freer to do what you choose. And you need to think of it in those terms. Now, I want to come right here to the end of the month. So as you can see, we've got the new moon here, sun with the moon. That is in the area of far horizons. It's there on the 13th, and it is all about a new journey in some way. You might like to think of the things that are happening now are the start of your new journey through the year. But it's this full moon that's probably a little bit more interesting, because what happens is at the moment the moon becomes full, sun in Aquarius, moon in Leo, the sun is also conjoined to Jupiter. So this is a real opportunity. There's an opportunity in whatever happens to you at this particular time. And what I'd like you to look at is a cycle kind of finishing. It's a cycle that began in the July of last year, and it is finishing at this particular time. It may relate to home life, changes within the home itself or to do with the family, but it also has a knock-on effect on things to do with your career and your life direction. So there are opportunities here, but there are also challenges. And so we can see this period of the month, the period really from about the 19th on to the 29th and 30th, as a time when a lot is happening, a lot of it bringing about a lot of change for you, especially if you have a birthday towards the end of April or very early in May. But I want you to see all of this really as a release and as gaining your liberty, rather than seeing the situations that happen as a kind of stone in your shoe, something you didn't want. It is your liberty. You will get your wings. Finally, I want to look at Mercury here. Mercury at the end of Aquarius on the 30th of January turns retrograde. And of course, we all know that on a retrograde Mercury, we don't get very far. It's a case of travel and transportation being a little more difficult, and also our communications, getting messages to people, receiving messages, getting confirmations. It's all much more challenging. But what I would like to say in Mercury retrograde's favor, that it gives us an opportunity to really reflect and review. We get to rethink a few situations. And with such a lot happening towards the end of that month that may change your plans, it's an opportune time to go back over them and reshape them. Now, as I said, as I began this video to you, January isn't a good example of what 2021 as a whole will be. But you know what it's doing? It's getting rid of a lot of things that are hangovers from 2020. You need to start clean and clear. And it is going to take a few weeks to really clear up a few things that were happening later in the year of 2020. And if you see that as purposeful, then you'll be all set to go as soon as February comes in. So thank you for watching, and all I have to do really is to wish you a very happy new year, and to let you know I'll be holding your hand throughout 2021 on my videos here and my audios, and of course online in my forecasts. Bye for now.